fashion, a more meaningful and technological fashion than Africans of the Nile. No mention of the philosophy and the ethos and ethics, the morality that's carved in their tombs and temples, built into the designs of their cities, even how they structured their society. One side of the river being the river of the place of the living, the other side being the preserve of the dead, and the two are opposites that are complementary, that the living and the dead beget each other, and there is life after death. No concept that the Africans had put in place the concept of the oneness of God before the ancient Hebrews. There was no content. And I had to say to myself after reading it 10 times, unbelieving what I was reading, that this was not an accident. This was by design, by people who knew what they were doing, stripping Africa of its significance in its place in the world. And the people who are doing it are very nice, friendly white folks, and some of their achieving Negro partners. That's the tragedy. These are not Ku Klux Klan people. These are some very nice white folks, your neighbors, your colleagues, the people that you work with. They go to church and the synagogue, think highly of themselves, but they didn't hesitate at all to distort history in what I call racial pathology. You see, they were upset with me with terms like that. Oh, Jeffries, the tone, you know, racial pathology. But how else do you describe something as diabolical as that? How else do you describe the attack on me as if I was the lone person reviewing the curriculum? And there were 4 of us. Dr. Hume, an Asian scholar from Hunter University, reviewed, and our task force was not to look at white history. Our task force was to look at we had a charge. It was written down. It was to look at the 150 volumes to see which of those volumes effectively dealt with people of color and which did not, and which were strong and which needed revision. We weren't asked to look at what Thomas Jefferson was doing. I brought that in as a part of my own understanding what was happening. They were saying we weren't positive about white folks. That's not what the charge was. We were to look to see what white folks had done about black folks. And they had done nothing about black folk in any significant way, and they had done nothing about Asian Americans or Asians, and Dr. Hume said that in her report. And Dr. Fratricelli, who handled the Puerto Rican Latino part, said they had done nothing in reference to the Latino and Puerto Rican. And the person, Professor White, who handled the Native American, said they had done nothing in reference to the Native American. In fact, the 3 special volumes on our particular groups, one on the black experience, one on the Puerto Rican experience, and one on the Native American experience, were inadequate. We gave them their pluses, but they were inadequate. The only volume on blacks in the state of New York was done by a school teacher and her students. That's what was submitted. It wasn't good enough. The volume on the Puerto Ricans focused mainly on mainland Puerto Rico and not the enormous migrant community of Puerto Ricans along the east coast of the United States. The volume on the Native American dealt with the one tradition, the Longhouse tradition, not the other traditions. It wasn't good enough. And we mentioned that. All of us never have met, never met, to this day, I have not seen Professor Hume. Dr. Fratricelli I met one time after all of this occurred. Professor White I never met. We never even communicated on the telephone. I received their reports and synthesized them, pulled out what we had collectively stated, and sent them as part of the general report, but their complete reports went as the appendices. And then the task force, which included white folks, Native Americans, Asians, blacks, etc., African peoples, took our recommendation, took our reports, and they put their analysis to it and presented it. It's as if one person took over the state of New York educational system, Leonard Jeffries, controlled the commissioner, and beat up this committee and imposed himself upon for his own reasons. The little bit of money that they paid me to do it, I get in some speaking engagements. In an hour. I don't have to spend 6 months out of my life for a couple of $1,000s. But once I saw what the problem was and what the task was, I realized it was part of the sacred that we as black folk have to try to right things that are wrong. And those of us who have carved out education as our area realize that we have to do a major job. Major surgery has to take place in the educational arena because the educational arena was designed to support the system of white supremacy that was institutionalized in this nation. That's what education was for. The legal system was designed to support the system of white supremacy in this nation. The economic system was the heart of the system of white supremacy in this nation. And the cultural system went along with that. Movies and all the rest of it. For years, I grew up as a youngster, just like you did, going to movies where the African peoples were completely denigrated. That was a conspiracy planned and plotted and programmed out of Hollywood, with people called Greenberg and Weisberg and Trigliani and whatnot. It's not being anti-Semitic to mention who developed Hollywood. Their names are there. MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, Adolf Zukor, Fox, Russian Jewry had a particular control over the movies. And their financial partners, the mafia, put together a system of destruction of black people. Talk about self-image and self-esteem. This was an important part of the cultural development of any youth. We went to the movies every Saturday and saw the Native Americans being wiped out and Africans being denigrated. Sambo images, Bueller, Stephen Fletcher. That's what they put up there. It was by design. It was calculated. So we have to see that there is a war against the African. Now, I knew it before, but I didn't know how devilish it was going to get, or could be, from nice white people. See, you don't feel so bad, you know, you don't feel so bad if you got to go up against someone who is really down and out devilish and doggish. But if you get the smiling people like Diane Ravitch, I'm trying to do the right thing. And I have done the right thing all these years. Read Diane Ravitch's record. Look at her track record. This is the ultimate, supreme, sophisticated, debonair racist. Pure and simple. And when Asa Hilliard and the others called her Miss Daisy, they did it right. And Asa said, we're going to let Miss Daisy drive her own damn car from now on. And Miss Daisy has several partners. Albert Shanker's been holding her hand for some time. And now he's at the door of the governor, beating him up, saying, you've got to go against this latest report. They went against our report, using me as a scapegoat, that some nasty person has gotten control of the educational system. So then they put in place a sanitized committee. They checked these people out on the computers. Ran the computer. Blah, blah, blah. Good, sound, qualified, achieving Negro. No problem. Good, sound, Native American. No problem. In other words, computers. But see, they don't know, and don't you all tell them, the power of the African Holy Ghost. You see, once that African Holy Ghost starts moving around, whatever their calculations was is thrown off. And that African Holy Ghost started working, and that committee with only a few blacks, which was supposed to be not only sanitized, but it was supposed to be dominated and led by rich white men with property and power. Arthur Schlesinger, distinguished professor at City University, and had been with the Kennedys and had been at Harvard. And then the melting pot man. What was his name? Glazer. Nathan Glazer, Dr.